Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm a channeler, and I've worked with doing spiritual work and metaphysical stuff for many, many decades. In these videos, I want to explore a lot of different topics, such as soul contracts, light language, and of course, channeling. And today I want to talk to you about what channeling really is and kind of demystify it a little bit. It's really not as special as you might think, because you do it too, and you may not even know that you're doing it. Channeling is just tuning into a higher frequency to receive information. That's really all it is. It's like tuning in your radio dial. You may be on, 98.2 listening to your favorite tunes, but while you're on 98.2, you can't hear what's on 107.9. So you have to shift the dial. You have to adjust. So adjusting for me is through meditation and connecting through meditation to raise my frequency, to connect with information and people that have passed on, ascended masters. There's all kinds of information that is available to us if we will become available to it. And it's pretty simple. It's not as mystical as you might think it is. I mean, think about it. I know that you've had times where all of a sudden you just knew information and you didn't know how you knew that information, but all of a sudden you just knew. Or maybe you've heard an internal voice that gave you direction or gave you a message, and there was no explanation for that. Or maybe you were given some instructions, or maybe you actually saw someone that has passed on come to you. And those are all forms of channeling. I've noticed with my husband over the years, and he doesn't identify it as channeling, but that's exactly what he's doing. He'll get stuck with one of his clients and maybe not know quite what to do next. And I've noticed that he will either take a walk or take a nap, and all of a sudden the information is there and he knows exactly what he's supposed to be doing, and it works out great. I have some stories for you about some of my own personal experiences. And this started for me consciously noticing these things coming and coming through and not knowing what it was even. I grew up in a very small rural town in Kansas, and there were no channelers, there were no psychics, there were no mediums around, but yet I was having these experiences with no one to talk to about. And my first really conscious remembrance was in my 20s. I had several different things happen. I was estranged from a family member for about 5 years. And one morning in meditation, all of a sudden I knew that she was pregnant, that she would have a boy, and that she would move. And those things came to happen just like that. But it kind of ticked me off because it wasn't my choice to be estranged. And so my feelings, my very human, feelings were kind of hurt because I knew I would not be involved in this new child's life that's coming in. And so I asked Spirit, I said, why do you tell me these things? And the answer was really simple. Spirit said very clearly, because you'll listen. And I think I've spent 40 years now of listening. And I've got some really astounding information, life-changing information for me anyway. I want to tell you a few other stories of how that has come through for me. And this one is really a pretty dramatic story. But when I was in my 20s, I was caring for a baby. This was not my biological child, but it felt like she was my biological child. I was very bonded to her. And one morning they were supposed to show up to drop her off, and they didn't show up. And they lived out of town about 20 minutes, and they didn't have a phone. Remember, this is the 80s, there's no cell phones. And so I didn't really get concerned about it. Later in the day, the grandfather called me to say that the baby was in the hospital, was having some difficulties. And so, I go to prayer, and I don't hear anything more that day. The next morning, I go to my basement to pray and meditate, which was my normal routine. And Jesus appeared to me holding her. I mean, right in front of me. And I knew in that moment that that baby had passed. Well, I went upstairs and turned on my kitchen light. The grandparents lived directly behind me, so they saw my kitchen light come on. And immediately the grandmother called me to say that the baby had passed. And I said, I know. That was a form of channeling, connecting into these higher frequencies to receive information. We as humans are human receivers. Let's receive that divine information that wants to come to us, but we have to do our part and pay attention. And over the years, that baby has come to me many times. Now, she was nonverbal, so she doesn't come to me in verbal messages, but she brings me a song. And this was really a big deal. I was driving home from Colorado about 11:30 at night, and the song Wind Beneath My Wings comes on my radio. And I heard Spirit say to me, this is her message to me. This was her thank you to me. And of course, I just bawled and bawled, and every time I ever heard that song, it just bring me to tears because I could feel it so deeply in my heart, that message from her, and I so greatly appreciated. And she's been gone almost 40 years now, and but she still, occasionally pops in. I don't hear a lot from her these days, but there for a while I heard a lot from her. But I didn't identify that experience as a channeled experience because I knew nothing about what channeling really was. So I hope you can begin to see where you've had those experiences of getting information, getting messages in unknown ways. And most often it's going to happen when you're relaxed. It's hard for spirit to get through when there's a lot of static and tension going on. So most likely that's how it will come. Oh, I have a really great another story for you about a channeled message where I heard an audible voice. And this was back in the 80s. I had two very, very small children, and it was a summer afternoon. And I heard Spirit say, go to Alco. Well, Alco was like this variety store on the other side of town. I don't even know if they still exist anymore or not. But it was hot. I didn't want to load the kids up. I didn't want to go. And so I kind of ignored the message. And a few minutes later, Spirit said very sternly, put your shoes on, go to Alco now. So, okay, I'm not going to argue with that. Again, I'm not thinking this is channeled information. I don't have that verbiage yet. And so I loaded up my two little kids, drove across town, went to the Alco store, and the Alco store had a foyer in the front where you come in. There's the shopping carts, there's a payphone on the wall, there's bubblegum machines, and then you go into the store. So I walked into the foyer, put my kids in the shopping cart, and proceeded into the store. Okay, I'm walking around for maybe just 5 or 10 minutes, not very long, and I'm getting frustrated because I have no clue. What am I doing here? I drove all the way across town, and I have no clue why I'm really here. I was just listening to the voice and following the message. So I get frustrated, and I decide, okay, I'm done. I'm going home. This is nuts. So I walk back out into the foyer, and Spirit would not let me leave. It's like, no, you're not leaving, you're not leaving. And I stand there for a couple minutes. But the payphone rings. Who calls the payphone? You know, the payphone rings and my heart goes boom. And I knew that my job was to answer that phone. So I answered the phone, and a gentleman on the other end asked for this woman. And I said, hey, this is a payphone at Alco. I'll go in and see if they'll page this person. But this is a payphone at Alco. I went in, asked them to page this person. A couple minutes later, that woman comes back out into the foyer, picks up the phone, and in that moment, Spirit says, okay, you can go now. I, to this day, don't have any idea what that phone call was about, but I listened, and it must have been important enough that somebody needed to be there to answer the phone for this person. We don't always get all the details. So anyway, I want to talk more and more about this topic, but there's other things too. But for today, I'm just going to share those few stories, and I hope you'll come back and you'll listen to some more of my stories, and I'll be sharing some channelings too. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for giving me your time. Bye-bye.